Ray walked alone through the red desert, his boots sinking into the hot sand. The wind blew softly, whispering through the canyon walls. He was here on a survey mission, collecting data for a future colony. No one else was near, just rocks, dust, and silence. He liked it that way. No voices, no orders, no noise. Just him, the wind, and a quiet hum of his scanner. But then, he heard something strange, a sound that didn't belong, a sharp cry, hyped. Full of pain and fear, Ray stopped and looked around. Nothing moved, but the cry came again. Echoing between the cliffs, it wasn't a beast's growl, not a machine's alarm. It sounded like a scream for help. Ray gripped the strap of his backpack tighter. He should have turned away. It wasn't his problem. But something inside him refused to walk away. He followed the sound, climbing over rocks. Stepping carefully between narrow paths, his scanner beeped and blinked, warning of unstable ground. But he kept going. The scream came again, weaker now. And then, silence. He reached a sharp drop where the canyon split open. Below, between the jagged stones, he saw her, a girl, no. An alien girl trapped under a pile of rocks. She had glowing silver-blue skin, smeared with blood and dirt. Her arm reached up weakly, fingers twitching. Her eyes met his bright, full of terror and pain. Ray's heart pounded. She was just a child, maybe 16 in human years. He had never seen her species before, but she was alive and suffering. Hold on, he shouted, kneeling down. She tried to speak, but only a choked sound came out. Ray scanned the area: unstable ground, sharp rocks, possible predators nearby. Still, he dropped his pack and climbed down to her. The rocks were heavy, some sharp. Her leg was pinned badly, and one of her arms was bleeding. She flinched as he touched her but didn't fight back. She was too weak, Ray whispered calmly. I'm not going to hurt you. She blinked slowly. As if trying to understand, he pulled out a small injector from his kit pain blocker. Safe for most species, she gasped as he pressed it against her neck. But then her body relaxed a little. Good, Ray muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. Now came the hard part, moving the rocks. He used a small gravity lift to shift the lighter ones. But the biggest stone on her leg wouldn't move easily. Ray placed his hands on it and pushed, gritting his teeth. His arms shook, muscles burning. But still, the rock stayed in place. He looked at the girl. She was fading, her breathing shallow. She didn't have much time. He tried again. This time wedging a steel rod underneath. Using it as a lever, he pushed with everything he had. The rock shifted, then rolled down the slope with a crash. Ray dropped to his knees, exhausted. The girl's leg was badly bruised, maybe broken, but she was free. She opened her mouth and whispered something in a language he didn't know. Then her eyes rolled back, and she passed out. Ray caught her before she hit the ground, cradling her in his arms. Her skin was cold, her breathing shallow, but she was alive. He looked up at the canyon walls, the sky growing darker. A storm was coming, and night wasn't far. He had a shelter, an old outpost not far from here, but carrying her would slow him down. Still, he didn't even think about leaving her. He wrapped her gently in a blanket from his pack and lifted her. She was light, fragile, almost weightless. Ray began the long walk back, each step harder than the last as the wind picked up. He glanced down at her sleeping face, so alien, yet so human in pain. He whispered, "You're not dying here, not while I'm breathing." Behind them, something moved in the shadows of the canyon. Tall figures, silent and watching. Ray didn't see them yet, but the girl had warned him with her scream, and he had answered. The wind howled louder as Ray climbed out of the canyon. Dust and sand blew across his face, stinging his skin. He held the alien girl close to his chest, shielding her from the cold air. Her breathing was faint, but still, they're still fighting. Ray didn't know her name, or what species she was. All he knew was she needed help, and fast. The temperature on this planet dropped dangerously low at night. If she didn't get shelter soon, she would die from the cold alone. His legs burned as he walked through the shifting sand. Each step felt heavier, each breath harder, but he refused to stop. Even when sharp stones cut through his boots, he pushed on. The girl stirred in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder. Her lips moved, whispering something in her alien language. Ray looked down at her, her eyes opened just a little, filled with confusion and fear. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. I've got you." She blinked. Slowly, then reached weakly toward his jacket. Her cold fingers curled into the fabric like a child grabbing a lifeline. Ray gritted his teeth and walked faster. The sky above turned deep purple as the sun dipped below the rocks. A strange sound echoed in the distance, a deep howl. Not human, not animal. Ray stopped and turned. Shapes moved on the high ridge, tall, thin figures with glowing eyes. They were watching him. He turned back around and began running. His shelter was close now, an old supply pod hidden in the cliffs. He had found it weeks ago, still functional. Built by an early scout team, now it was the only place that could save her. The howls came again. Closer this time. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He could feel them, stalking the rocks behind him. The girl whimpered, her body shaking. In his arms, her skin glowed faintly now, pulsing like a dim light. She was burning energy just to stay alive. Ray spotted the cliff entrance ahead, half covered in vines and stone. He slid down the path and reached the shelter door. With a shaking hand, he pressed the old security pad. The door opened with a hiss, and Ray rushed inside. The pod was dark and cold, but safe. Ray laid the girl down on a foam mattress and quickly sealed the door behind them. He turned on the emergency power. The lights flickered, then held. Warm air began to blow softly from a wall vent. He knelt beside her, checking her pulse again. Still there, but slower. Ray pulled off her torn clothing carefully and wrapped her in a heated blanket. He paused for a second. Her body was covered in strange, glowing lines like tattoos or natural energy patterns. He didn't know, but they pulsed slowly, like they were alive. He treated her wounds with Magel wrapping, her bruised leg with care. She groaned in pain, but didn't wake. Ray sat down beside her, watching her chest rise and fall. She was safe for now. Then he heard a noise, a soft scraping at the outer walls, like claws on metal. Ray stood and grabbed his blaster, switching off the interior lights. He peered through the tiny security window. Nothing there. Just blackness, but the wind had stopped. Too quiet now. The girl shifted under the blanket, her glowing eyes opening again. She sat up slightly, fear in her face, and pointed to the door. She whispered one word in a broken voice. "Hunters." Ray's breath caught in his throat. She knew they were out there. He nodded slowly and whispered back, "They won't get in." She reached out, touching his chest with her hand. Her fingers glowed for a moment, and Ray felt something warm flow into him. He didn't know what it was, maybe trust, maybe connection, maybe warning. But he understood she was giving him her strength. Or her hope. The scraping came again, this time from the roof. Ray moved quietly to the console and activated the outer sensors, 3 life forms, circling, waiting. He had only one blaster, limited power, and no backup. But he had made a choice the moment he heard her scream. He wasn't going to let her die, not in that canyon, and not here. He looked over at the girl, who was trying to sit up despite the pain. She was watching him, now her eyes no longer full of fear but belief. Ray gave her a small nod and whispered, "We fight together." The storm outside picked up again, but inside that small shelter, something stronger was building. Not just survival, but connection, and neither of them. "We're going to give up. Not tonight." The wind screamed outside like a wild animal. Dust and sharp sand pounded against the metal walls of the shelter. Inside, the air was warm but heavy with tension. Ray sat on a crate near the sealed door, blaster in hand, eyes fixed on the motion. Sensor, 3 red lights blinked softly on the screen, still circling. Still close, the alien girl lay wrapped in the heat blanket, her skin pale and glowing softly. She stared at Ray from the mattress, not speaking, just watching him. Her leg was bandaged, her arms bruised, but she was alive, and for now, safe. Ray didn't know what these hunters wanted, but from the girl's face, he guessed they wouldn't stop until they had her again, or saw her dead, and that wasn't going to happen. Not while he was breathing. The girl shifted, struggling. To sit up, Ray stood quickly and moved to her side. "Hey, easy," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're still healing." She shook her head slowly and pointed to the floor, then made a slicing motion through the air. "Trap," she whispered, her voice cracked and dry. Ray frowned. "You're saying they set the trap?" "The rock fall." She nodded, weak but sure. He sat beside her, rubbing the back of his neck. "So they wanted you buried alive," he muttered, more to himself. "Why? What are you to them?" The girl looked down, her glowing fingers trembling. She touched her chest and drew a glowing symbol in the air, 3 circles linked by light, then pointed to herself and then to the roof. Ray didn't understand the symbol, but he saw it made her afraid. Something sacred, maybe, or powerful. Ray stood and checked the generator, only 40% charge left. The heating would hold for a few hours, maybe more, but if the hunters didn't leave, they'd be stuck here too long, without power or food. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the shelter. The girl flinched, eyes wide. Ray spun around and pointed his blaster at the door. Silence again. Another bang, this time from the back. While Ray's heart thudded in his chest. "They're testing the walls," he said through clenched teeth. Looking for weak spots, the girl tried to get up again, her hand glowing brighter. "No," Ray said, placing a firm hand on her arm. "You need to rest. Not fight. Not now." She looked up at him, sadness and frustration in her glowing eyes. Ray knelt beside her, lowering his voice. "I need you." "Alive," he said. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Her lips parted slightly, as if surprised by his words. Then slowly, she nodded. Ray returned to the door and tapped the console again. 1.1 of the hunters was standing. Still right by the entrance, just waiting. Another dot moved around the far side of the shelter. The third was gone from the sensors, either hiding or on the roof again. Ray opened a crate and pulled out 2 smoke grenades, a flare gun, and a short blade. Not much, but better than nothing. He set the grenades near the entrance just in case. The girl watched him from the mattress, her eyes tracking every move. Then she did something strange. She raised her hand and pointed at the power core. Ray blinked. "What?" She pointed again, then touched her own chest, and mimed energy flowing from her heart into the machine. Ray stared at her, realizing slowly she was offering to charge the shelter herself. He hesitated. "That could drain you. Maybe even kill you." She looked at him, full of calm, and shook her head. She pulled the blanket off, sat upright, and held her hand against the glowing core. Instantly, the lights in the shelter brightened. The heater blew warmer. Ray's scanner beeped battery. Levels rising. But the girl's skin dimmed, her shoulders slumping. Ray rushed over and caught her as she collapsed back into the mattress. Her breath came shallow, her energy almost gone. "You stubborn little star," he whispered, gently laying her back down. "You just saved us both." Outside, the storm howled louder, but the shelter stood strong. Inside, the light glowed brighter than before. Ray checked the motion sensors. Against 2 red dots still remained, but now they were backing away. The third dot never returned. Maybe they were afraid of her. Maybe they were waiting for night to fall fully. Either way, Ray knew this was just the beginning. He looked at the girl, now sleeping soundly. He had questions too many, but one thing was clear. She had risked everything for both of them, and now it was his turn to return the favor. He wasn't just protecting her, he was standing beside her, ready for whatever came next. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, something stronger had begun to grow trust. Hours passed while the storm roared across the alien desert. Ray sat quietly near the sleeping girl, listening to the wind rattle the metal walls. His blaster rested in his lap, but his eyes stayed on her face. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly under the heat lamp. Soft patterns moved beneath her surface, glowing lines like tiny rivers of light. He had never seen anything like it. Not in all his travels, not in the files of alien species logged by the colony. Who was she? She stirred in her sleep, whispering words he couldn't understand. Her hand clutched at the blanket, her body shivering even with the heat. Ray got up and sat beside her, brushing a strand of silver hair away from her forehead. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe here." Slowly, her glowing eyes opened. She looked at him with confusion at first, then calm. She tried to sit up, but Ray gently pushed her shoulder back down. "Rest," he said. "You used a lot of energy." She pointed at his chest where her glowing hand had touched him before. Ray pulled his shirt down slightly and blinked. A mark had formed on his skin, a glowing shape like a crescent moon inside a circle. It pulsed softly, same as her skin. "What is this?" he whispered. She didn't answer with words, but she placed her hand over it and looked deep into his eyes. Suddenly, a wave of warmth flowed through his body. His mind filled with flashes, images, feelings, voices that weren't his. He saw a grand temple with towers made of crystal. He saw her dressed in robes. Surrounded by beings like her, he saw chaos fire, screaming, those same tall hunters destroying everything. And then silence, darkness, falling rocks. Ray gasped and pulled back, his breath shaking. "What was that?" he asked, stunned. The girl lowered her hand and looked down. She slowly formed a word with her lips, in broken English. "Last," she whispered. Ray tilted his head. "Last, what?" She looked up again, pain in her glowing eyes. "Last of us." Ray's chest tightened. She wasn't just any alien. She was the last survivor of a wiped-out people. A people who had once held great power, maybe even wisdom lost to time. And now she was alone, hunted, nearly killed under rocks in a canyon. He sat back in silence, the weight of it sinking in. "No wonder they wanted you dead," he muttered. "Whoever those hunters are. They weren't just trying to destroy a person. They were trying to erase everything you came from." The girl reached beside her and drew another glowing symbol in the air. It shimmered briefly, a star with 4 wings surrounding it, then faded. She whispered, "My people. Made light. Protect life, not war." Ray listened carefully, nodding slowly. "And they feared that," he said. "So they crushed it." She looked at him again, and this time gently touched his forehead. Another rush of energy moved through him, this time slower. Like a memory, he saw her younger, standing before a crowd. She was more than just a citizen. She was a guardian, or maybe even royalty. She had carried knowledge, power, and responsibility. She had been chosen, not born into it, and now all of it rested in her injured hands. Ray stood and paced the small room, mind racing. "If they find out you're still alive," he said, "they'll come again harder." He turned toward her. "We can't stay here." She nodded weakly, but her eyes lit with fire. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was preparing. Ray sat down beside her again, this time without fear. He placed a hand over the glowing mark on his chest. "Whatever this is," he said, "it linked us. I felt what you felt. Saw what you saw. You trusted me," he added. "Now I trust you." The girl reached out, pressing her palm to his again. Their combined touch glowed like a small sun. No words were needed. The bond had been sealed. Outside, the storm finally began to fade, but Ray knew the peace wouldn't last. The hunters would return, and next time they wouldn't just try to bury her. They'd come to erase the last spark of a forgotten light. But Ray wasn't going to let that happen. Not to her. He'd protect her, fight beside her, and help her. Find the strength she'd lost, because now her truth was his truth too. And in this cruel galaxy, maybe kindness was the most powerful weapon left. Ray barely slept that night. He sat near the door, holding his blaster, sharp, ears focused. The alien girl, now resting peacefully again, lay curled beneath the heated blanket. Her breathing had grown stronger, but Ray knew peace would not last. The wind outside had calmed, but the danger had not left with the storm. He could feel it in the air, like a warning before lightning strikes. Suddenly, the motion sensor bipped. A single red dot blinked on the screen, then two more joined it. The hunters were back. Ray stood up, heart pounding. He checked the traps he'd placed at the door, ready to defend. Then he turned to look at the girl. Still sleeping, her glow had returned, brighter than before, but her energy was not yet full. He whispered, "Don't wake up for this. I'll handle them." But as if sensing his fear, her eyes opened slowly. She sat up, shaky but alert. Her eyes met his, glowing like twin stars in the dark. "They found us," Ray said simply. She nodded once. She already knew. He moved to the wall and pressed a button, activating exterior cams on the small screen. The hunters appeared, three tall, shadowy figures, faces hidden behind masks. They carried long metal staffs and moved with inhuman silence. They were circling the shelter again, like wolves watching a wounded deer. The girl limped to the edge of the mattress, her hand glowing softly. She made a symbol in the air, two lines crossing like an X, then pointed at the roof. Ray understood one of them was going to try to break in from above. He ran to the ladder and climbed to the upper hatch. He could hear the faint tap-tap of claws above. The metal was holding, but for how long? Ray aimed the blaster at the hatch and waited. Then crack. A small dent appeared in the ceiling. A long black claw pushed through the metal with slow, sharp force. Ray didn't hesitate. He fired. The blast hit the roof with a loud bang. "Ah!" Shriek followed as the hunter fell backward. Ray didn't wait. He grabbed a flare gun and fired it into the sky through a side vent. The red flare lit up the cliffs in every direction. Now they couldn't hide. The other two hunters rushed toward the front of the shelter. Ray sprinted back down the ladder, locking the upper hatch. He reached the girl, who now stood barefoot, wrapped in the blanket like a cape. She raised her hands, and the glow pulsing under her skin brightened. "You shouldn't be standing," Ray said, but she shook her head, this time. "I stand with you," she whispered. The first blast hit the door loud and hard, then another. Boom. The whole shelter shook. The second one left a dent in the metal. Ray prepared to fire through the small side port, but the girl stepped beside him. She touched the wall and closed her eyes. The glowing lines on her skin traveled into the shelter walls, spreading like veins of light. The metal turned golden and firm. Her power was strengthening the shelter itself. But it was draining her. Ray saw her knees buckle slightly. He grabbed her arm to support her. "You can't keep doing this." She looked at him and whispered, "We must protect." Then the hunters made their final move. They threw something metal and sharp to the side of the shelter. A small explosion blasted the air vent open, and toxic gas began to fill the room. Ray quickly activated the air filters. But it wasn't enough. The girl raised her hand and made a sweeping motion suddenly. The gas moved as if pushed by an invisible force. It flowed back out the vent like smoke being sucked through a tunnel. Outside, one of the hunters screamed, enraged, choking on their own trap. Ray used that moment. He opened the side panel and aimed his blaster. He fired once. Hitting the figure in the chest, the hunter fell without a sound. Only 2 remained, but they were furious now. Ray slammed the panel shut and turned to the girl. She was pale, breathing hard, but her eyes still glowed. "I can't do this without you," he said softly. She looked up and replied, "You don't have to." Then she placed her glowing palm against his chest again. This time, the energy flowed both ways. Ray felt something shift. His body steadied. His fear faded. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. Another bang came at the door, but it didn't break. And now Ray and the girl stood together, side by side, ready for the next attack. This wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was war, and together they would fight it. The shelter shook again, harder than before. Dust fell from the ceiling as the 2 remaining hunters struck the outer wall with strange, sharp weapons. Ray stood firm near the entrance, sweat on his brow, blaster in hand, beside him. The alien girls, Maul, bruised and glowing, kept her hand on his chest. Their bond pulsed like a quiet heartbeat between them. Then, the mark she had placed on Ray's skin, it lit up with fierce white light. Ray gasped as heat rushed through his veins. His vision sharpened, his mind calmed. He wasn't just human anymore. For a moment, he felt something ancient stir inside him, like she had unlocked something hidden within. The girl stepped forward. Standing taller now, despite her weak body, her voice was low, steady, and echoed faintly, as if layered with many voices. She raised her hands toward the ceiling, her eyes glowing pure silver. Outside, the wind stopped suddenly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then came silence. Ray looked at the motion tracker. The 2 hunters had stopped moving. Suddenly, a loud metallic screech tore through the air. The front door of the shelter bent inward as one of the hunters tried to rip it open. Sparks flew, and part of the steel warped. One more hit, and it would break. Ray aimed the blaster, but the girl raised her hand to stop him. She walked toward the damaged door, her feet steady, her body glowing. With growing power, Ray called out, "Wait. What are you doing?" She looked back at him, her voice calm. "They follow fear," she whispered. "I will show them none." She placed both glowing palms on the metal door. The glow from her hands spread quickly across the steel markings. Appeared on the surface ancient symbols like a forgotten language. Then boom. The door burst outward, not inward. The light exploded in all directions. Blinding and loud like thunder, Ray shielded his eyes. When he looked again, she was standing outside, in the open, in the night wind. Facing both hunters alone, her body lit the ground around her in a soft white glow. Her skin shimmered like starlight, and the symbol on her chest now pulsed brighter than ever. Ray ran to the doorway, ready to jump in, but something told him this was her moment. The hunters hesitated, their weapons raised but unmoving. They circled her slowly, unsure, as if seeing her again was something they didn't expect. One of them stepped forward, tall and cruel. He raised a long staff and spoke in a deep, growling alien language. Ray couldn't understand the words, but the girl did. She raised her hand in response and spoke a single word. Firm and final. The hunter froze, then screamed in rage and charged, but he didn't make it far as he rushed toward her. The girl raised both hands. Light burst from her fingertips like a wave. The hunter was thrown backward through the air, his staff flying from his hand. He hit the rocks and didn't move again. The second hunter howled in anger and leaped toward her, but this time Ray acted. He fired his blaster straight into the attacker's chest, once, then twice. The creature stumbled, then the girl reached out and finished it with a pulse of pure energy that cracked the air like lightning. Both hunters now lay on the ground, moving, defeated. The desert was silent again. Only the wind moved softly. Now, Ray rushed to the girl's side. She was breathing hard, swaying, her glow flickering like a dying flame. He caught her as she fell into his arms. Her skin was cold again, her power drained. "You did it," Ray whispered, holding her close. "You stopped them." She looked up at him with heavy eyes and gave a tiny, tired smile, but her lips trembled and a single word escaped them, soft and broken. "Not over." Ray's stomach dropped. He looked around the cliffs, now dark and still. "What do you mean?" he asked. "They're gone." She shook her head slowly and pointed to the stars. Far in the sky, among the stars, a faint light blinked a ship, a much larger one, still far. But coming closer, Ray held her tighter. She had awakened her power, and in doing so, sent out a signal, a flare in the dark, calling others. Some would come to destroy. But maybe some would come to help. Ray looked down at the girl in his arms. He didn't know what would come next, but one thing was clear: he wouldn't leave her. He wouldn't run. He would stand between her and whatever came next, because in that moment, he wasn't just her protector anymore. He was her partner. The stars above shimmered quietly, but Ray could feel the tension rising with every heartbeat. He stood at the edge of the broken shelter. The alien girl cradled gently in his arms. Her glowing skin had dimmed, her breath soft and tired. She had saved both of them, and now she had nothing left to give. Far above, a light moved across the sky. It wasn't a star, it pulsed, red and white. A ship, growing larger every second. And it was coming straight for them. Ray looked down at the girl, her head resting weakly against his chest. "You said it wasn't over," he whispered. She opened her eyes slightly and nodded. "Big one. Coming," she murmured. "Not hunters." Worse, Ray's jaw tightened. He had no more grenades, only a half-used blaster. The shelter was broken, the traps destroyed, and the girl could barely stand. But even now, he wasn't afraid. He had made a promise to himself when he first saw her crushed under those rocks. He wouldn't let her die alone. Not in that canyon, not here either. The ship pierced the clouds, now fully visible. It was massive, sleek, and black. No lights, no markings. It hovered silently above the cliffs. And then, it released something. A pod, glowing red, dropped from its underbelly and slammed into the ground not far from them. The earth shook and dust rose into the air. Ray backed up slowly, pulling the girl behind a rock wall near the shelter's entrance. She gripped his jacket, her fingers weak but determined. "They want me," she whispered, "last. They want to finish it." Ray crouched beside her, speaking softly. "Then they'll have to go through me first." She looked up at him, surprised again by his words. She tried to speak, but her lips trembled instead. She pressed her hand to his chest. The glowing mark she left on him flared one last time. Ray gasped as a surge of warmth filled him. It wasn't power this time, it was memory. He saw her world, her people, her childhood running through crystal fields, her voice singing to the skies. Her first battle, her fear, her courage, and finally, her fall the rocks, the darkness, the silence, then him. When the vision ended, he was on his knees, trembling. The girl gently touched his face. "No one ever stayed," she whispered. "Not until you." Ray's throat tightened. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "Not ever again." The pod hissed open across the sand. From it, a figure emerged, tall, in armor that shimmered like smoke. Its face was hidden behind a golden mask. It held a long staff pulsing with energy. Ray stepped forward, shielding the girl behind him. The figure raised one hand and spoke in a cold, strange tongue. Ray didn't understand, but he didn't need to. The message was clear. Hand her over or die. Ray gripped his blaster, raising it with steady hands, but the girl limped forward and stood beside him. Her body was still weak, but her eyes glowed brighter again. She placed one hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Together." The figure snarled and raised its weapon, but before it could strike, a new sound filled the sky, a hum rising from. Above then, a flash of light. Another ship appeared. Smaller, but shining like silver fire. It moved fast, diving low, and then hovered between them and the dark figure. Ray stared in shock. He didn't recognize the ship, but the girl did. Tears filled her glowing eyes. She reached out toward the light and whispered one word: home. The silver ship opened, and more beings like her stepped out. Not many, but enough to show she was no longer the last. A woman with the same glowing lines ran toward them, shouting in their native tongue. The girl collapsed forward, but Ray caught her again. The dark figure hissed and vanished into shadow, disappearing before the new arrivals could stop it. The danger was gone for now. The girl was lifted gently by her people. They looked at Ray with surprise and deep respect. One of them bowed, placing a hand over their heart. Ray nodded silently, still catching his breath. The girl looked at him one more time as they carried her onto the ship. She raised her hand and smiled. Ray stepped forward, unsure what to say, but she spoke first. "My name is Ilari," she said softly. "Yours is not forgotten." Then the doors closed, and the silver ship rose slowly into the sky. Ray watched until it vanished beyond the clouds. Only the wind remained behind. He stood there for a long time. Alone again, but different now, changed. He had come to this planet for work, but found something greater. He had saved a life, sparked a bond, and helped protect a light almost lost forever. Ray looked down at the glowing mark, still faintly. On his chest, he smiled. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he.